Hello, friends. This is Empowering Democracy, and it's the first of my 3 streams today. The title is this one. The topic of it is Finkelstein versus Shmuley. Or maybe I should have entitled it Norm versus Botech. Or maybe I should have entitled it Norm Finkelstein versus Shmuley Botech. Who's lying? Anyway, there was a stream a couple of days ago, maybe yesterday, I forget. Let's see, let me check when it was. Exactly. It was on February 20th. It was on Piers Morgan's Uncensored show. Okay. And Piers appeared to be trying to set up a debate between Norman Finkelstein and Rabbi Shmuley Botech, who is only identified in the title of Piers' show as Rabbi Shmuley. So you'd think his first name was Rabbi and last name was Shmuley. But anyway, that is not so, as I've tried to indicate here. I found this show to be very infuriating. I thought that Piers was a terrible moderator, or Piers, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his first name. I've seen him a lot over the years, but I never paid much attention to the correct pronunciation of his first name. So I apologize for that. I thought he was a terrible moderator, clearly somewhat on the side of Shmuley. He let Shmuley go on with a personal attack against Norm, a classic sort of ad hominem attack. He picked up on it eventually, but he should have picked up on it the second it started and said, none of that here, Shmuley. We want to discuss the issues. We want to discuss the specifics. Norm's background or personality or reputation, as you characterize it, is not one of the issues that we're talking about here. We want to talk about the Israel-Hamas war, and we want Norm's take on it and your take on it. That's what Piers should have done, I think, to start with. He did not do that. I think he let the discussion get out of hand. I think Norm tried to stick to the subject, but he did a little bit of labeling himself, which I think was rather gratuitous and was somewhat damaging to his case. He could have given a better answer on a critical question. I'm going to try to give that particular better answer here. So, I'm going to start off with some clips from Piers Morgan's show, or at least some short segments of it.
Welcome to both of you. Let me start, if I may, with you, Norman Finkelstein. Good to have you back on Uncensored.
Thank you for having me.
We seem to be reaching a point here where something has to give. Either Israel stops obliterating Gaza and killing so many innocent people in the process, or I'm not sure what the alternative is. How do you read where we are with this war?
There are many ways to read it. You can read it politically, you can read it militarily, you can read it strategically, or you can read it from the point of view of human rights and international law, so long as it bears on human rights. Now, when it comes to the very last consideration, I think it's very clear how we should read it. Namely, the International Court of Justice, the supreme judicial body in the world, has said that Israel is under two obligations. Obligation number one is to honor the laws of war in what it's doing in Gaza. And obligation number two, Israel has to provide humanitarian aid and assistance to the people of Gaza. Those are its two obligations under international law. The court also ruled that Israel is plausibly committing genocide, and there is no evidence whatsoever, zero evidence, that since the court ruling, Israel has changed its tactics or its strategy in Gaza.
Now, it seems to me that Norm's interpretation here, his statement of what the ICJ found, while brief, was accurate. His interpretation, following his statement of what the ICJ found, that Israel hasn't produced any evidence, or there is no evidence existing at this time, that Israel has changed, its behavior since the decision by the International Court of Justice, is also a pretty straightforward statement, I think, and one any reasonable person would agree with. So Norm is playing it straight, seems to me. Let's go on.
So as of now, as we speak, Israel is still, by the conclusion of 15 judges in the International Court of Justice, 15 of the 17 judges, Israel is committing genocide or plausibly committing genocide.
I don't think the justices said that Israel is committing genocide, but they did say that Israel, is but plausibly committing genocide, or that there is evidence, plenty of evidence, that it's plausible to claim that Israel, is committing genocide. So I still think Norm is playing it straight.
And it's not honoring its obligations as they were spelled out by the International Court of Justice.
Okay.
So again, Norm is playing it straight. I also don't think there's any evidence that Israel is doing anything to mitigate the damages that were done, in Gaza, and to refute the charge that it is in the process of committing, a genocide. Now here goes, Piers.
Rabbi Shmuley, you tweeted this morning when we booked you for this debate. You called Norman Finkelstein an anti-Semite. You said, "You have my word that God willing, I will digitally decapitate, digitally disembowel, and digitally destroy him."
Now, why did Piers ask that question? Why didn't he go directly to Rabbi Shmuley and ask him to comment on what Norm said? If there's going to be a debate between them, it should be a debate on what the court actually said, it seemed to me. Does Rabbi Shmuley agree with the characterization given by Norman? Piers Morgan asked this question, and he talks about a personal attack that Rabbi Shmuley made, on Twitter, calling Norman Finkelstein an anti-Semite, a Jewish anti-Semite specifically. Okay, and so Piers then asks a question, of Shmuley about that, instead of starting up the debate on what the International Court of Justice had done, which of course should be the central issue here. But anyway, let me go on.
Do you think that was the right kind of rhetoric before you try and debate?
So he asked him if that was the right thing to do. Why is that a major issue to be debated? I don't understand what Piers was trying to get at here. Let's go.
Such a serious matter?
First of all, thank you for having me back, Piers. It's nice to see you. And Norm, I hope you don't mind if I call you Norm. You can please call me Shmuley. Norman Finkelstein is on the show for only one reason. If the journalistic idiom that Jews are news is true, because Israel's this big, it gets this much attention, then how much more so Jewish anti-Semites get the brightest headlights. Norman Finkelstein is the foremost Jewish anti-Semite on planet Earth.
So why didn't Piers Morgan stop him right there and say, this is not about a personal attack on Norm Finkelstein. This is about issues surrounding the war. Why are you conducting a personal attack on Norman Finkelstein? Please stop it. We don't want to have that as part of the debate. We expect that you won't conduct a personal attack on Norman, and that he's not going to conduct a personal attack on you. And Piers should have also said, and believe me, there are grounds for a personal attack on you as well. But that's not what we want to debate here. We don't want to debate whether Norman is a schmuck and you're a schmuck too. That's not what we're about here. But Piers didn't do that. I think Piers is a terrible moderator.
He attacked his own parents, whose only crime was to be Jewish. Their entire family was annihilated in Warsaw. They're not victims. They hated Germans and wanted them dead. He didn't.
I saw Norman speak about his parents and particularly his mother, on another show. He was very respectful towards his mother. He obviously loved her very much. He was talking about the fact that as a result of her experiences, she hated the Germans. That's not an attack on his mother. It was a factual statement in the context Norman was talking about it. It was a very meaningful statement and relevant to the argument that he was making. Shmuley is bringing it up here as if Norman was attacking his mother and using this idea to attack Norman. Oh, how dare he attack his mother because, his mother hated Germans. I got news for you. Lots of Jewish people who lived through the Second World War came out of the Second World War hating the Germans for what they did in the Second World War, me included. I was a boy, at the time. And many of my relatives over in Europe were gassed. I came out of the Second World War hating the Germans and hating all things German. Didn't stop for 15 to 20 years afterwards. I began meeting and getting to know some Germans during the 1970s, and I began to understand the human dimensions of what had gone on there on both sides, and my hatred of Germans disappeared. But many Jews came out of the Second World War with a hatred of Germans, and no wonder.
Think to himself, maybe my parents wanted the Germans to suffer to stop the war, to break the will of the German people, to stop murdering, gassing 10,000 Jews per day. His hatred of the Jewish people has...
Okay, so Piers keeps letting him go on with this personal attack, and he doesn't say anything. He just looks at him. Why?
extended even to his own family. He calls Israel...
Okay, where is it where Piers finally stops him?
their bloody breasts like a football.
Yeah, I didn't want to discuss that here, but as it happens, what Shmuley is doing
Glory,
here,
hallelujah.
what Shmuley is doing here is not only attacking Norman for something he said about the October 7th attack, but he's also repeating the baseless, false, and debunked charges concerning what the Hamas people were doing in Israel, but to the Israelis. I didn't want to bring those up here and debunk those here, but Max Blumenthal and others have done a terrific job of debunking the claims about the babies and the rapes and the playing football with breasts, okay, and all that crap. There is no evidence that those things are true other than some manufactured pieces by the Israelis themselves. And a lot of those charges have been withdrawn, but Shmuley is still repeating them long after they have been debunked definitively. Anyway, going on, I want to pick up on Piers here. Here we go.
Professor Woolgate.
I want to
Okay.
just ask you this, though. You see, it's interesting. Norman Finkelstein gave I thought, a pretty measured argument in response to my first question. You've gone ad hominem immediately. And
he let him go ad hominem for, what was it, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? He let him go ad hominem for all that time. Why?
attacked the man, not the issue, and not the question that I asked you, which is to respond to what he was saying, which is a growing feeling around the world, by the way, that Israel is now committing, as he put it, as the court said, a plausible genocide. I don't happen to think it is genocide they're doing, but what I do think is happening is that there is a shameful number of innocent women and children being slaughtered on a daily basis, and I don't see what the end game is other than the obliteration of most of Gaza and many people living there. So to answer that point,
So let me answer your question directly. First of all, when you quote President Lula of Brazil, he is a criminal who served in jail for...
Now, let me point out, and Shmuley doesn't mention this, and the omission is a lie. Lula spent time, okay, in jail. He did. He spent quite some time in jail. But evidence came out that he was railroaded by crooked justices in Brazil. And he was let out. It was proved that he was innocent of the charges that were leveled at him. As soon as he got out, he ran for president, okay, again. He ran against the incumbent president, who is a fascist. And Lula won. Shmuley doesn't mention these facts. He just mentions that Lula spent time in jail, therefore what he says can't be trusted. In other words, he delivers an ad hominem, okay, against what Lula had to say. That's all he has. is ad hominems, personal attacks against people in order to dismiss their views. Shmuley goes on.
Or corruption, he has zero credibility. He also knows nothing about history. 10,000 Jews were gassed a day for 4 years after the Wannsee Conference in January 1942. To compare that to Gaza is an abomination.
It's not about the comparing of the two in terms of the number of people who were killed. After all, the Nazis had years to kill people. The Israelis have only been killing people for a few months. So the comparison is not relevant in that way. The issue is that according to the definitions of genocide by the international community, according to international law, the official statement of what genocide is in the 1948 conventions, against the crime, of genocide, what the Nazis did was genocide. Also, it appears that the definition of genocide fits what the Israelis are doing now, in Gaza. It's not an open and shut case yet, of course. The International Court of Justice only made a preliminary ruling about the plausibility of the case in order to determine whether it is worth actually taking up. But these cases at the ICJ, as Rabbi Shmuley very well knows, take a long time to sift through all the evidence and to decide, in part because the court doesn't want to be unfair to the accused country. The court was never going to make a final decision on January 28th concerning whether the Israelis were guilty of genocide or not. All it was ever going to find was whether there was plausible evidence for that. And it did find that. It did find that. And it did much more than that, and we'll get to that in just a moment.
Secondly, Norman Finkelstein is a liar. The International Court of Justice specifically said that Israel is not committing a genocide.
Now, let us be very careful about that. They did not say Israel was not committing, a genocide. They ruled there was plausible evidence, of genocide, and they laid down certain orders for the Israelis to follow to prevent what was happening turning into a full-blown genocide. They found plausible evidence there were genocidal acts. So Shmuley is calling Norm a liar because of the straightforward statements Norm made, at the start. Does he produce any evidence that Norm is a liar by actually going back to the documents that were produced by the World Court? Let's go on.
So when you tell me why do I go after ad hominem, I'm questioning his academic credentials.
What do Norm's academic credentials have to do with anything here? Norm made some statements about what the court found. You decide whether Norm was right or Norm was wrong by referring to the documents about what the court found. But Shmuley doesn't do that. He launches another personal attack. That's what that last thing was. Well, that infuriated me. The whole thing devolved basically into personal attacks. Not a useful thing was said because Piers Morgan ran his debate in that way. He was more interested in the fireworks than he was in having a legitimate debate between these two people. And that played into Shmuley's hands because Shmuley did not want a legitimate debate. He wanted to make attacks on Norm and destroy his credibility through making personal attacks. That's all Shmuley's got. That's all he does. Anyway, let me not make a personal attack on Shmuley. Let me now remove sorry, let me get to what I'm trying to do here. I want to pull up a file now briefly. There it is. This is a Word file. It contains a quotation from the ICJ orders that were given to Israel by the International Court of Justice, by the World Court, as of January 27th, 2024. All I'm going to do is quote it, and then I'm going to ask you a question. For these reasons, the court indicates the following provisional measures. Yes, the court approved provisional measures that it was ordering Israel to take. 1, by 15 votes to 2, the state of Israel shall, in accordance with its obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, in relation to Palestinians in Gaza, take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of this convention in particular. A, killing members of the group, of course, being the Palestinians. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. I ask you, what are the Israelis doing in Rafah today? What were they doing in Khan Yunis? What were they doing in Gaza City? What are they continuing to do? Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. What were they doing in the hospitals? What were they doing in the hospitals? In favor of this provisional measure was the president of the panel, Joan Donahue, from the United States. I'm not going to read all of the other names, but this was a 15-2 vote, in favor. I do want to add, that Donahue used to work for the U.S. State Department, specifically for Hillary Clinton, before she became a justice of the World Court. 2, by 15 votes to 2, the state of Israel shall ensure with immediate effect that its military does not commit any acts described in point 1, above. Now I ask you, has Israel done anything to ensure that? Anything at all to ensure that? Since January 28th, when a decision was made public. or was it on the 27th? I forget. Again, 15 votes to 2. And I should mention that in the first provisional measure, number 1, there was a judge from Nigeria, okay, I believe, who voted against on every one of the measures. And another judge, specifically Barak, the ad hoc judge from Israel, who had been for most of his career with the Israeli Supreme Court, but who definitely had a bias towards Israel. He was the second vote against. In the second measure, which I just read, it was Sebutinde and Barak, again, who were against. Everybody else was for, including the president of the panel, specifically Donahue. Number 3, by 16 votes to 1, the state of Israel shall take all measures within its power to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. 16 in favor this time, including Barak. Only Sebutinde was against. Number 4, by 16 votes to 1, the state of Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. I ask you, what has Israel done since that provisional measure came forth? It's done nothing. It's actually facilitated the blocking of some of the aid trucks by citizens of Israel themselves who have come to the area, who are protesting, who are demonstrating, and who are blocking the trucks. And Israel has done nothing to stop them. In favor, again, 16 votes, including Barak, okay, also Donahue. The only vote against, Judge Sebutinde, okay, the Nigerian judge. 5, by 15 votes to 2, the state of Israel shall take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence related to allegations of facts within the scope of Article 2 and Article 3 of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide against members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. Has Israel done anything to do that? Not that I have ever seen, not that I am aware, and I've been looking out for it. Against, Judge Sebutinde and Judge Barak, another 15 to 2 vote. And 6th, the final provisional measure, by 15 votes to 2, the state of Israel shall submit a report to the court on all measures taken to give effect to this order within 1 month as from the date of this order. The 1 month is rapidly approaching now. It is a week away. Will Israel submit a report? It will be interesting to see, and it will be interesting to see what, if anything, is in the report. And again, the same 2 judges were against, Judge Sebutinde and Barak. So there you are. That was a quote from the International Court of Justice. So I ask you the key question. Who was lying there? Who was lying? Was Norman Finkelstein lying? Or was Rabbi Shmuley lying? I'm not going to tell you what my opinion is. I leave it up to you. You be the judges. Who's the liar? Finkelstein was called a liar. He was called a liar by Shmuley. But who's the liar? Is it Finkelstein or is it Rabbi Shmuley Botech? So that's it for this stream. I have 2 more coming. I'll be doing them between 8 and 9 p.m. tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank you for attending. I'm a little over time, about 36 minutes. And D says, Rabbi S. I leave it to you to judge, folks.